Okay, I can just start by saying hello, good evening. Welcome to today's session hosted by Mythology Meets Science. Um, and I thank you, both of you, for joining this session. Um, Today's session is on the topic is Mahabharata from Draupadi's perspective. Shruti Sharma is the speaker, and she prepared some excellent slides for the session. So I will pass it on to Shruti now. Uh, yeah, Shruti, you can share your computer screen.
Okay, is it not shared?
Yeah, no, I can see.
It's shared? You can see?
Yes.
Okay. So, hi, I'm Shruti. I'm actually a marketer and a tester with Test Sigma at the moment. And mythology is something that I'm particularly interested in. I am mostly interested in the literary part of Mahabharata, and I've read quite a lot of different takes by different writers on Mahabharata. And one of my favorites is the perspective of Draupadi, and it is very nicely depicted in the book The Palace of Illusions. So based on that and some other texts that I read, I have created this presentation. So here I'll try to introduce Mahabharata from the perspective of Draupadi. So disclaimer is necessary in subjects like this, that I am not in any way going to discuss Mahabharata as a religious text. I'm just going to discuss it as a literary masterpiece, a major epic that has a lot of characters who have different storylines and different shades to them, and all of them have their weaknesses like the humans have. And the Mahabharata takes quite interesting turns and multiple events. So why a story and why the point of view? So a story, as you can see, is made up of a plot, tone, theme, setting, conflict, characters, point of view, and stories can be narrated from multiple point of views. Our Mahabharata is narrated from the narrator point of view. That is, the narrator knows everything. It's an omniscient point of view. So the narrator can narrate what they want to and at what time they want to, and they can they might opt to not convey the information that they don't want to at some point. But with tales like these that become so famous and so many people are interested in these, it becomes quite imperative with the changing times that they also get to see the different perspectives. And as earlier, women were not thought of as much. Women were not given their voice in the original Mahabharata. So multiple writers have tried to narrate this story from Draupadi's perspective. So just to revise Mahabharata, so that
just a second. Sorry to interrupt. Is it? Do you have a mic or something? Because your voice is a bit low. Or
okay.
Yeah, you can speak. Yeah.
Is it better now?
Yeah, it is far better. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I think before we begin discussing the perspective of Draupadi, we need to revise Mahabharata, at least majorly what it is. So, like we know, it begins with Shantanu. Shantanu, who is who marries Ganga and gives birth to Bhishma, but Ganga leaves him eventually, and then he meets Satyavati and falls in love with her, but Satyavati would not marry him. She only agrees to marry him on the condition that he would let only her sons become the king. So Shantanu agrees, and that is how Bhishma gets the name Bhishma and takes the vow of not getting married ever. And Satyavati gives birth to Chitrangad and Vichitravirya, but bad luck is there. They both are not strong and die quite in a short time. But Vichitravirya gets married to Ambika and Ambalika, and through Niyog they have kids, Pandu and Dhritarashtra. but there also Dhritarashtra is blind and Pandu is a bit weak. But then Dhritarashtra gets married to Gandhari, while Pandu marries Kunti and Madri. And then there is Gandhari's brother Shakuni, who plays a major role eventually, we know that. Then Kunti gives birth to Pandavas and Yudhishthir, Bhim and Arjun, and Madri gives birth to Nakul and Sahadev. And Gandhari gives birth to 100 sons and one daughter, Dushala. Then how Draupadi comes in all of this is that Draupad gives birth to Shikhandi, Drishtadyumna and Draupadi. We know that Draupad was the friend of Drona and they had some bad blood among them. So Draupad wanted vengeance from Drona. We will talk about it later, but because Draupadi is also the princess of Panchal, she is also called Panchali, and she is also referred to as Krishna and Yagyaseni because she was born out of a yagya, she was born out of fire. And then eventually she gets married to 5 of Pandavas, which in itself is a rare polyandry. Like we don't have any other instance where one woman would get married to many men. Then she has 5 sons and one from each of the Pandavas. So we will discuss the events in Draupadi's life, starting from her birth, then marriage and children, then how she becomes the empress, then Duryodhan's insult, that is one major event, and then the game of dice. That changes everything for Draupadi and Pandavas and also the Kurus, and then the exile, then the Kurukshetra war, then Ashwatthama's attack, and then their later life and death. So as we discussed, Draupadi did not have a natural birth. She was born out of fire, and they say that she was born a maiden. And she was born because her father wanted vengeance from Drona. She was born along with her brother Drishtadyumna. So, but once she was born, there was an announcement from the fire that she would do some great things and would change things. But thinking from the perspective of Draupadi, being born a maiden, not having a natural birth, not having a natural upbringing, it creates some gaps in our personalities, because we don't know how it is to be a child, to be given that unconditional love, right? And then she is born because of the feeling of vengeance of her father. That feeling is not a good feeling. So having born with that feeling and carrying that feeling all of the life, that can also have major impacts on anyone's psyche, and that was how Draupadi's psyche was impacted too, right? Then she was married in a swayamvar. Of course, swayamvar means that you get to choose your groom, but here she had a task set for the prospective grooms. The task was set for archers, and while the kings were not able to achieve to win, finally Arjun, who was who posed as a Brahmin, who was in a Brahmin disguise, he came and he won the contest. And then when he took Draupadi to her mother, to his mother, her mother did not see her. She thought that he had got some arms like usual, and she said that share it with. When he told her that I've got something, she said share it with your brothers like you usually do, equally. And then that became to her marrying five of the brothers, and this of course was a challenging marriage, marrying 5 husbands and trying to be impartial to all of them. And then these husbands had also the options, they got other wives too, so not being jealous of other wives. So these were some challenges that Draupadi faced in her marriage. Then Draupadi, when once Draupadi got married to Arjun, Arjun and other brothers, the word got out that these Pandavas who were supposed to be dead in the incident, they are not dead. So the Kauravas, Duryodhan, they were supposed to give some land for them to rule. So they gave them Khandavprasth, which was a land of snakes and barren land in a jungle. But with the help of they were able to create Indraprasth out of it. And in Indraprasth, they got a palace of illusions made for them. So this palace was made by Asur Mayasur. So this palace was full of illusions. And it for Draupadi, this was one of the favorite things in her life. Like there were a score of animals and birds that she could be with. The palace was very beautiful. It kept changing, and for Draupadi, this was one of the golden time of all her being, and she enjoyed there. Then Yudhishthir as king had the Rajsuya Yagya, which was successful, and after that they invited other kings, and he invited Duryodhan too. But then we know about Duryodhan's insult. There he was in the palace of illusions, and he thought that it was a shiny floor, while it was actually not floor, it was water, and he stepped into it and he fell into the water. So Draupadi and her mates laughed on it, and someone passed the comment that a son of a blind person is a blind person, which Duryodhan did not take nicely, and he took it as an insult. And when he went back, he he had started hating Draupadi there, and he wanted to not only want till now he just wanted his own kingdom. He wanted to be the king of Hastinapur, but now he wanted vengeance his from Pandavas and from Draupadi. Now he wanted to humiliate them. So then came the game of dice, where Yudhishthir and his brothers and Draupadi were invited for a game of dice. Yudhishthir had this weakness; he liked the game of dice. Now he had to play this game of dice with Shakuni, who was a master of this game. He was there was a rumor that his dice would listen to him, right? So Shakuni played from the side of Duryodhan, and Yudhishthir played, and Yudhishthir kept losing and losing. At one point he lost all the property he had, he lost his kingdom, and then he lost himself, and then he started betting his brothers and losing them, and eventually Duryodhan asked him to put Draupadi on stake, and that he did too, and lost her. Then Draupadi, of course, Duryodhan wanted to humiliate Draupadi too. So he asked Dushasan to carry her from her chamber, pulling her hair. Right? She was in her chambers, and she was forcibly got from there. And then the people did not treat her with respect. She was not, of course, dressed for the assembly. And in the assembly, there were elders present who did not say anything to what was happening. The attempt to disrobe her, the famous Draupadi Cheer Haran, was tried too, which failed. But all of it happened in the presence of elders, while Draupadi tried requesting the elders to stop it, to not let this wrong happen. And she also made this point that she cannot be betted because the Yudhishthir had lost himself. She could not be his property then. But no one listened to her, and this happened. But then eventually they were forgiven, and they only had to go for exile for 12 years and 1 year of incognito. Now all of this happened with Draupadi. Someone tried to disrobe her, someone tried to pull her hair. She was insulted in front of all the assembly. Going to an exile with husbands that failed her, and trying to be with them for 12 years. I think we all know it must have been very tough for her to stay with those husbands, and for the husbands to stay with the wives that they wronged. So from the perspective of Draupadi going through that time, we can understand the pain that all of these people must have gone through. And of course they had this feeling of vengeance inside them, then that they had to revenge whatever wrong was done to them, and especially to Draupadi. We know that Bhim took some vows that because Duryodhan pulled her hair, he will wash her hair with his blood, and that because of one remark that Duryodhan made, he will break his thigh. So all of these things, they stayed together for 13 years. All of these feelings, I think we can imagine how tough it would have been for them, and especially for Draupadi, who had gone through like a major humiliation. Then, because of all of this, while everyone tried to stop a war, the war happened to avenge the wrongs done by the Kauravas. And but the war happened. The war was with their own kins, right? There were multiple people who died. It was not only their own kins. There were many people, many like war is never just uh, a war, right? War brings a lot of sufferings. Many people die, and when many people die, there are many families that get bereaved, and there is a lot of suffering. A lot of people who lose people, and it is not just a physical suffering, mentally also it's a major torture. And when you see your people, who the people who have worked for you, the people who have helped you, they are losing their family, they are crying over it, and then you see that your own kins who have been with you while you were growing up, they are dying, that becomes a major suffering too. So, while Draupadi wanted her revenge, wanted her husband to take the revenge, this was the cost that they had to give, that they had to pay. Then, after the war was over, Ashwathama, to avenge the death of his father, killed Drishdyum and Draupadi's sons while they were sleeping. I think for a mother, there cannot be other uh, any other suffering bigger than this. And I think for Draupadi, this was a major blow that she received, and that broke her. So, this was the major turn off for her. Then in the later life, Draupadi and Yudhishthir, when they got the Hastinapur and Indraprasth to rule, they performed the Ashwamedh Yagya and they ruled for 36 years. And then once they decided that it's time for them to give up their rule and to take sannyas, they go to Himalayas, right? Their final journey. So she is the one who falls dead first, right? We know that. And when Bhim asks Yudhishthir why Draupadi fell first, Yudhishthir replies, "O best of men, though we were all equal unto her, she had a great partiality for Dhananjay. Dhananjay is Arjun. She obtains the fruit of that conduct today." But if we look at ourselves as a human, I think there will always be one person that we will love the most, right? For Draupadi, how was it possible to be impartial like that? I think that was a big challenge for her. And though Yudhishthir said she failed that ways, but I don't know if this is not being human, then what is? So there are books that have depicted these aspects very well. Like many writers have tried to understand her perspectives and write about it. And like I said, the Palace of Illusions will take you through uh, all of these events, and you will get to know in depth what Draupadi goes through while being a human. We may say that these were devis who came in the form of humans, but when you are in a human form, you also suffer as a human. So that is what I think these writings are trying to tell us. The Palace of Illusions, the Song of Draupadi by Ira Mukherjee has tried to understand the perspective of Draupadi and other women also in Mahabharata who have not been given a voice for so long. Then there is Jaya by Devdutt Patnaik. That's a very beautiful book, and that's an illustrated retelling. And he weaves in, like he will tell you what folklore some tale is coming from, what regional variant some is coming from, because Mahabharata has multiple variants, multiple retellings. Then another one is Ajaya, the role of dice and the rise of Kali, that explores Duryodhan's perspective. So these are some great books that you can explore to know this better, understand this better. Uh, so I'll wrap it up here. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Shruti. And I think I see some more people have joined. Does anyone wants to add something or post a question? So that's a no. But in general, like you prepared the slides. It's about the journey of Draupadi in Mahabharata. But what about? I mean, what do you think? What was the idea behind insult to um, uh, the Kaurav when Draupadi did that? What do you think? Why did
What
she do that to
insult to
Duryodhana?
Duryodhan?
Why did?
So actually there are multiple variants. The original Mahabharat variant does not have this, does not say that Draupadi says this. There are variants that say that Draupadi said this line. There are variants that say that Draupadi only smiled and her mate said this. But whatever happened, Duryodhan took it on himself. And I think this is the policy of human nature. Not judging anyone, sometimes people say things that they should not be saying, and they regret it later. So but yes, this was a bad comment for Duryodhan also. um, and that is what, like, I don't look at it as right or wrong. We have seen that Draupadi has been said to be a strong woman who says her mind. Like when she was pulled to the assembly, she also pleaded that there were rules that said that uh, she cannot be bettered in a game of dice. She knew. She also was managing the Indraprasth when she was the empress, as managing the economy. But yeah, that is how events happen, and that is how stories unfold. Like if we see in our life, we also have done mistakes, and then we learn from them. So uh, that's how I look at it. Just some turn of events.
Okay, it's a good perspective. At least you acknowledge that as a mistake, which is interesting. Uh, and I guess there is no other question. And I understand today in India it's a very important day in terms of sports. So maybe we had less people joining, but people who have joined, thank you for that. And if there are no other questions, then I will stop the recording now.